Thank you very much for staying with us on Frontline. There you just listened to the news brought to you by Adeola Adegoke. Now moving on to our interview segment. Nigeria is a country, of course, with its focus on ensuring that the lives and properties of people are protected. Now this duty has been designated to a particular agency, and some agencies who are sworn commitments to ensuring that the lives of people are indeed protected. One of such is the Nigerian Police Force, which has as its mantra, "Police is your friend." Now within the police force, there are several other agencies, several other squads, and one of such squads is this Special Anti-Robbery Squad, which, well, maybe is an extension, but there also part of it is the Special Anti-Cultism Squad, Special Anti-Kidnapping Squad. All of the squads are committed to the protection of lives of people, prevention of crimes, and ensuring that there is law and order in the country. But over the past few years, these agencies have been known for wanton arrest and, of course, brutal measures meted out on Nigerians who, in the process, have lost their lives in the hands of those people. It led to the convention of a particular group of campaigns, protests by several persons, groups on the social media and in real life, marching out to protest against the activities of the SARS under the hashtag #EndSARS and hashtag Reform the Police. And these protests were, or the hashtag specifically, were convened by Segun Awoyemi, who's working with several other persons. And of course enjoys the support of Amnesty International, who've said that the number of lives lost to the activities, the undue, untold hardship meted out on people by SARS is indeed unbecoming. Today we're going to be looking at the need for a reform in the police force, and of course what possibly can be done towards ensuring that we do not have issues around the deaths of people, the murder of people, violence on people by SARS. Bearing in mind that a couple of days ago now, specifically March 31, there was another death in the hands of a member of the Special Anti-Cultism Squad. This has generated more protests, and we're going to be looking at why we indeed need to reform the police force and contain the activities of those people, especially towards ensuring that lives are protected. And I'm being joined today by a criminologist. He is God's Power Ujene. You're welcome on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
In 2016, there was this massive protest on the social media, and we had protests by persons who marched all the way to key strategic places. And it was under the hashtag #EndSARS. And this was in pursuance of bringing an end to the activities of this agency, which has led to the death of people, several persons, and people coming up to begin to recount their experiences under this agency by members of the agency. Now, some 3 years afterwards, 3 years after we had the hashtag #EndSARS, we're still at this point of brutality in the hands of members of agencies that should be protecting us. I mean, why does it seem as if nothing has changed since the massive protest and now?
Once again, thank you for having me on the program. Now, you cannot keep doing the same thing over and over again, and you keep expecting a different result. Now, the police reform bill that is underway in the National Assembly definitely will put some of these questions to rest, because it is very pertinent that everywhere in the world, the police brutality, law enforcement brutality is rampant. Only that the unfortunate aspect of the Nigerian case is that people everywhere in the world are looking for a way to curb these things. But Nigeria, as a nation, we have had limited opportunities, or rather limited instances where these cases could be curbed. So I think that more needs to be done on the aspect of the law enforcement agents and then even the laws that are also meted out to the public. We need to do more and not keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Thank you, Godspan. Now, in 2018, we saw the Vice President Osinbajo, make a move towards reforming the police, towards curbing the undue violence in the end of SARS. And then he decentralized, he did, what's the word now? He did make it a federal SARS, which meant that he overhauled, that's the word I'm looking for, he overhauled the Nigerian Police Special Anti-Robbery Squad and did say that the jurisdiction should be at the federal level and that they should attend strictly to armed robbery and kidnapping cases. But of course we saw an overturn of that directive given by the Vice President when the acting Inspector General of Police came on board, would they decentralize and of course reignited the state SARS, meaning they could operate at different states and of course have their services, their duties extended beyond kidnapping or these grievous cases that should be restricted into. Now, how do we explain the fact that the Vice President gave a directive and the agency, the head of the agency that's supposed to be enforcing law and order, did give a counter directive that has led to even more grievous activities in the hands of those people?
Okay, the problem of Nigeria from the ab initio had never been the death of policies, neither has it been the death of directives. I think the people at the helm of affairs, like the executives, I suppose they have good intent. And then the problem has been the misplacement of duties, the misplacement of functions, the usurpation of powers. You see one arm of government usurping the powers of the other. And you see impunity taking place. You see somebody who had been appointed into a position, the person assumes powers that are not supposed to be. Now, a vice president who was an acting president ordered for a police reform, for instance now, what you just said, he gave a presidential order. And then this was not being followed. This order was reverted or reversed by an appointee, somebody that was appointed. So I suppose in this country, when Nigerians, the appointed officials, learn how to play by the rules, I suppose things will get better.
Thank you. Now it's important that, like you rightly say, that when rules are made, we play according to those rules. And more important it is that those who make the rules adhere to the rules. In the case of the police specifically. Now let's talk about the #EndSARS campaign and of course #reform the police. I mean, this went on. And of course, following the hashtag were testimonies, possibly testimonies of persons who had some experiences in the ends of SARS. This went on. Now, does it seem to you as if the government ever takes such protests seriously? I mean, following those protests, we had a counter comment by a representative of the police force in Lagos State, specifically their spokesperson, CSP Chike Oti, who did say SARS was doing well. In the light of all of the allegations against this force, does it seem to you as this agency in itself sitting down to listen and realize, I mean, all of those people couldn't possibly be lying against us? Are they really serious about the complaints of the people whose taxes fund them, whose responsibility they have to protect? I mean, what do you make of all of this?
From what is going on, you know, you just cannot keep denying these things because it's in the public space. These things are well documented. Actually, the police brutality did not start today. These police misconduct, the extrajudicial killings, it did not start today. It had been there. And then there are researchers, even the NSAS hashtag. I have a work that will be published soon enough. I was able to collate the cases, and then you discover that there are tons of them. Videos on Twitter, videos on YouTube, videos on Facebook and other social media. You discover these things are there. Even researchers. Okay, for instance, while I was seated, I was going through a work by one Odisu, a researcher from Delta State. And then you discover, he wrote it in 2016. And you discover that he documented, this is an academic work, a well-documented research of cases starting from the 1984, the Wode brothers, starting from 1984. These are cases that have been there. They are in the public space. So why would we keep denying it? I suppose if, when we start, there is a saying that I commonly use everywhere. We will do well and we will avert our mistakes if we accept our mistakes. So the Nigerian police force should step up. And when things like this happen, like the recent killing of the Kolade Johnson, when things like this happen, it shouldn't be only death that the police should owe up to. It shouldn't be only in the case of death that they should owe up to. When things like this happen, they should immediately swing into action and make their research, and then let them apologize, or rather let them give up whatever is necessary, the punishment and then even the remuneration to the individual that is a victim.
Thank you. I like the fact you specifically stated that it shouldn't be in the case of death that the police owes up to charges placed against it. Yes, even in minute issues as persons being harassed, persons having their human rights violated, they should also owe up to those allegations.
Of course.
Now let me ask, you're a criminologist. I mean, you study crimes, you study, I suppose, the punishment that occur to certain crimes and possibly how crimes could be contained. But let's talk about how the police force got to the point of this brutality. You did say it isn't just happening, it's been happening for over many years now. We'll just get to the talking about it now. There have been several persons killed by this force. In the case of a crime suspected or suspicion of any crime, what's the due process? I mean, we have persons who did say, and I did have seen persons who right in front of my office were stopped because they had the bags of a particular mold and they had their phones collected, looked through. What's the due process in following up a suspected crime?
In criminology, there's what we call the funnel of crime. In the criminal justice system, there is a funnel. Now, when a crime is suspected, when somebody lays a complaint and says, this is what happened, my right had been violated, what is needed of the police? I don't even think that the police has a special unit that does this, like investigating crimes or allegations against the police personnel themselves. I don't think they have.
The orderly trial they carry out on persons who have been accused of.
Now, as an individual, as a common individual, you just walk into the police and you say, so police officer had harassed me. So police officer had violated my rights. Now, you will see in a very common police station across the street, you will discover that you see the policeman behind the counter. He wards you off. He would like, okay, put down your statement. And then trust me, if you are not an influential person, that is where your statement dies. In some cases, you will discover that you would even be the one that will be accused in the long run. That you did this, you did that. Now, when this happens, when something like this happens, someone lays a complaint and says, this is what happened, my rights had been violated. What is expected is for the police to follow up. And when the police follows up, you remove the individual, the police officer, from the field, and then you watch him closely or her closely, and then you start the orderly procedure. And then this orderly procedure should be made public. It shouldn't be a secret room trial where, that is my opinion anyway, where whatever comes out and then you say this is the outcome of the trial. And some of them are acquitted right from the police vicinity. Now, what is the redress that the person in question had sought? What injury had been inflicted, and so therefore, what injury had been ameliorated? So my question, my argument here is that when things like this happen, let the due process take place. Let it move from stage to stage, and then as it's moving from stage to stage, let the victim be carried along. The end is not necessarily what will heal the injury, but the process, how incorporated you are in the process. You will say, okay, they did their best. This is where I got it wrong. This is where I got it right. So that is my argument.
That's a really notable. I really would pick on the fact that you did say, in your opinion, of course, the orderly room trial should be made public so people can know what happens right there, and there seem to be no perversion of justice, especially in favor of the police officer, which is really something that should be looked into. Now, let's still talking about the mode of operation of SARS. Okay. Earlier, I talked about how they would apprehend you because they suspect you. Now, in the case of the situation that led to the death of the late Kolade Johnson, the police persons in charge, now two of them, now one has been dismissed, of course, Olale Konga has been dismissed, but they have gone to a particular vicinity, Mango Renikwetesi vicinity of Lagos State, to apprehend someone they suspected was a cultist. Now, there are indications that person wore a dreadlock or something, and there are persons who wear dreadlocks who say that they have been apprehended just because they wore dreadlocks. You have a big car, now big is relative. You're in a fine car, you're apprehended because they suspect you couldn't possibly have so much money to buy this car. You're suspected for looking good. You're suspected for having a good phone. Are these within the purview of what should serve as mode of operation of those people? Because I understand SARS is supposed to be an intelligence-driven unit.
Yes.
Very intelligent, but do all of this look intelligent to you?
The intelligent aspect of the Nigerian police force is actually needs to be revisited. Now, I recently made a research on the number of people that use iPhones, because I suppose in Nigeria here, once you have an iPhone, especially the latest, is a problem.
You're a crime. You're a suspected crime.
Yes, yes. How did you get the money? And then, like you just said, you rightly said, once you're dressed in a particular manner, and then you're carrying an iPhone, worst of it all, if there are two, you are in trouble. Now, do you know that 90% of Americans use iPhones? 90% of American citizens use iPhones. It is not a big deal. These are utilities. These are things that you can easily fall in love with, and then you acquire them just for personal use. What if I am driving a very good car and then you stop me? I have my dreadlocks on, and then you pull me over, and then you ask me, how did you get the money to buy this? Even in most cases, even when you provide the necessary certifications, they still tell you it's not true. How did you get the money to buy this car? Now, does it mean that everybody in Nigeria should be poor? Even when you are rich, should you drive a rickety car? If you have the means, your parents are rich, or you have a distant relative that is rich, if they decide to spend their legacy on you, does it mean that you should say no because you are afraid? No. Like you said, intelligence should be the order of the day. Okay, you are a small boy, you have dreadlocks on. Now, if your dreadlocks are on and you are driving a good car, you have good phones. Now, why not follow us to the police station? Quietly.
Should you even take me to the police station because I drive a good car?
Okay, that is at the extreme case. I'm trying to come from the extreme point. Now, why not follow us if you are so suspicious of me? Why not follow us to the police station? I follow you to the police station. Please put down your name, put down the details of whatever you have, and then go. We'll contact you. And then you start making your inquiries. You start gathering your intelligence. People in Nigeria here, police arrest before investigating. It is not done anywhere in the world. You investigate before arrest. But once they suspect you, you are arrested, you are thrown behind bars, and then their investigation will begin. The investigation begins if only you have the wherewithal to follow up the case.
And
if you don't have it, that's how you languish in the prison. We hear of prisons like the Abattoir in Abuja and the rest of them. That is how you languish in the prison. And you discover that there are cases, there are tons of cases of people who have been arrested and they do not have they cannot be charged to court. And even in most cases, when they are charged to the court, they are acquitted because of lack of evidence. There is nothing to show. Somebody is wielding a phone, a big phone, and then you think the person is a criminal. Now, why not take down whatever details and then you follow up the case from there instead of arresting the person and preventing the person from going about his or her daily activities?
Thank you so very much, God's power. Now, it's in the bid to contain these unscrupulous activities of members of the Nigerian police force that a bill towards reforming the police is being, of course, assessed at the National Assembly level. It passed its second reading in July 2018, and that is the police reform bill. Now, in the midst of this recent situation, we got a reaction from the Senate President, Bukola Saraki, who did say that a report on that bill would be submitted to himself, to the Senate President, and of course read before the General Assembly on Tuesday, which would be that April 8th or the April 9th, specifically April 9th. We're expecting that all of this would indeed culminate into a better police force. We'll look at the implication of this bill and some more issues on reforming the police brutality, the urgency of a reform after this break. Do stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us. You're welcome back. The program is still Frontline, and we're still looking at police brutality, the urgency of a reform. My guest is still Godspa Ojene. He is a criminologist and he's also a researcher, and is speaking a lot about what needs to be done differently, especially in improving on the modalities of law enforcement and, of course, protection of lives and properties in Nigeria. Just before we went on the break, we've looked a lot about the activities of those people and what they should actually be doing right, rather than the obtained and, of course, the obvious cases we've seen laid out against them in the discharge of their activities. Now, we talked about the police reform bill, which you also made reference to, and which is specifically to orientate the modern police to make it an agency that meets globally acceptable policing standards. Now, one of the highlights of the Police Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2018 is to review methods of dealing with abuse of weapons by police officers. The bill also seeks to ensure that the police and police officers are held accountable in their actions, especially in the areas of arrest and detention of persons and searches. You talked about how it's easy to make policies in the country, and now enforcing them just might seem to be the problem we keep having over and over.
Over and over.
What are your expectations as we look forward to the presentation of reports at the Senate? According to the Senate President, would it say that a report on the bill would be laid before him in a couple of days? What are your expectations from the bill, I mean, we've had bills delay over and over. It's been on since 2018. What do you expect from this bill?
The bill in and around itself is actually a welcome idea. The implementation is what we should await. Like I said, Nigeria is very good at making laws, but the implementation is the problem. When this bill is dished out, I expect all agencies involved to swing into action. Let all the agencies involved, and then let the judiciary system, let the judiciary be at alert for cases like this. You know, they just finish election, and then you hear that there are 700 cases that are resultant upon the election. And then does it mean that it is only elections that we should document these cases? Now the judiciary should be at alert. Once the bill is released and then it has been assented to by the president, let every individual, every agency, every department that is charged with the responsibility of enforcing this bill swing into action. That is my opinion.
Thank you.
And my advice.
Which is indeed very important that be looked into. Now, over the years, punishment for officers, errant officers, who are tried and probably found guilty, some are acquitted, like you said. Now, those found guilty have usually been either dismissed, had their ranks reduced, served warning notice, reprimanded severely, and all of those. We've not had, I mean, there are few cases, if there is any at all, where a police officer found guilty of having murdered another person, a civilian in this context, is also led to, I mean, served a death sentence. I mean, we've not gotten a corroborating punishment for offenses committed by those people. What should be done in this regard? Especially, specifically in resuscitating the hope and confidence of Nigerians.
Actually, these are incidences that at some point could be averted, especially the unfortunate death of Kolade Johnson and so many others. These are incidences that could be averted. Now, it is very important, apart from the punishment aspect, it is very important that at least a police officer who is demoted from whatever the rank might have been and then to a lower rank, and then there is a lifestyle that police officer starts leading because he's no longer the person he used to be. Now, somebody who is let go, a police officer that is let go, there is also the problem with that. But what is the most effective way of curbing brutality is to avoid it. If a police, I would also recommend that if a police officer is found guilty of extrajudicial killing or involuntary manslaughter, even if it's a voluntary manslaughter, whatever the case might be, let the courts swing into action and let the due process take place. For instance, if a civilian kills and the Constitution says that whoever kills must be killed, let this, whether it is in the course of your duty or not, let the due process take place. Now, if a police officer involuntarily kills an individual and then he is found guilty and is discharged by the police, let the police also make an arrest of the same police officer and then let them go through the same judicial system. And then if the person is found guilty, let him also be killed. I believe there is a kind of cover-up somewhere, because like you rightly said, it's only in few cases that you've heard that somebody killed somebody involuntarily, a police officer killed a civilian involuntarily, and then the person was killed. Only in few cases. I, for one, don't know about one, but only in few cases. So what we're saying is that when the person is dismissed, you are stripped of your function, you are stripped of your role as a law enforcement agent. You are now a civilian. then let the civil court try you, and let the civil process be commenced. And if you're found guilty like every other individual, you should also face the judgment. If it is death, then face the death penalty.
We're expecting this will be done, especially in curtailing the undue violence, violent activities in the hands of those people. Now, there are some who are of the school of thought that one of the reasons police act unduly, one of the reasons they are usually involved in unscrupulous activities is that, one, the means of appointing them is scrupulous in quote. I mean, you get to pay, now these are allegations by some persons that you get to pay some amount of money and you curry the favor of the superior officer and then eventually you get appointed. Now some are also of the opinion that some of those persons are engaged in unscrupulous activities because the welfare of members of this force is outrightly poor. Do you agree with this?
Like I said, there are documents out there. It is like the Odisu I mentioned earlier. He found out that 70% of the current police officers we have enlisted, 70% of them never wanted the job in the first place. Now, how do you fall in love with something you never wanted, something that came by chance? They never wanted the job in the first place. Now, the job, they took it up because there is no job in the society. So whatever comes, we go with. Now, if they took it up because there is no job in the society, the priority would be to earn a living. The priority by any means, to make a living by any means. Now, if the priority is that, let it be that we have to stand on the road, we have to do this, we have to extort, and the rest of them. If the due process in Nigeria is not just a police case now, it's not just a police problem now, it's a general phenomenon, a Nigerian case. Let people with passion, the passion to, before we started, you asked me a question whether I would have loved to join. Of course, I applied, but I was not taken. But I had this, I actually went into, I studied criminology because I wanted to curb crime. Like, I like curbing crime. And then you see places like United States, you see a police officer will come and tell you that I enlisted into the police force because my father was killed by some bandits. Exactly. And then I had the passion to locate the killers of my father. And then he enlisted. And then you see the person doing well, excelling in the process. Now, there are people that have the passion, no matter how devastating the police job looks in Nigeria. There are people that have the passion. Now, why not fetch these people instead of doing the backdoor recruitment? Why not fetch these people? And you see them exuding their passion into what they do. So, like I said earlier, it is not just a police problem. It is a phenomenon in Nigeria that needs to be curbed. So, if the employment situation in Nigeria, and not just curbing the employment situation, making sure that due process is followed in the employment procedure, I suppose things will go better. And then these police officers would do well.
Thank you so very much, Godwin. Now, finally, before I let you go, we've had cases where an Inspector General of Police gives an order, for instance, specifically when the former Inspector General of Police, Brian Idris, said that roadblocks be pulled off roads. That was not followed to the letter. Because even within Ibadan or your state, there were still some points where, now the physical roadblocks could be pulled off, but you still had police mounting specific places, now extorting. Now it seems we have an issue of those responsible for law enforcement fall short of enforcing the law within themselves. I mean, there have been several illegal practices used within this force, and we've not had an IGP, someone who asserts or exerts much authority, come up to say this is what should be done, especially in the interest of the people, and that the orderlies, those who work within this force, obey. Then doesn't this put a question mark on the safety of people, the enforcement of law and order, and some sanctity in the society?
You rightly said, they gave an order and the orders are not being followed. Now, the truth is, there are some places, I just don't know the reason why. There are some roads in Nigeria. I've been traveling for the past 2-3 months. I've been traveling all around the country. There are some roads in Nigeria that you drive for like 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers. For the next 1 hour, 2 hours, you're on the road. And you can't find a single police roadblock. And then you leave there, you get on another road. And then every two minutes, you're stopped. You're pulled over and you are extorted. You pay. Now the question is, why is it so in that aspect of the road? And why is it so on the other aspect? Why is it so? Like you said, it is very important that when an order, there is nothing else that the IGP would do other than to say it. When he says it, just like the vice president said it earlier, there was nothing, he doesn't have to be the one to implement the laws. There are designated bodies that are meant to implement these laws. When the IGP says it, the onus is on the bodies that are meant to implement the laws to implement it. The IGP is doing his best, but the people directly behind him, directly under him, should take up the law. When you start respecting the authorities that be, things will move on fine.
Thank you very much. It's important we respect the authorities that be, and of course follow with the directives. When this will serve the interest of the people, the security agencies now have sworn to protect and uphold the law that they also try to give on daily basis. But it's also important that while Nigerians grieve over the death of Kolade Johnson and his families are yet to heal over the pains that they are experiencing, we're hoping that there would be no more Kolade Johnson, especially in terms of persons suffering any form of hardship, and of course meeting their deaths and the end of agencies whose responsibility it is to protect them. But as a form of development on the issue of the police officers who were involved in the death of Kolade Johnson, we told you earlier in the program that one of them, Oguyemi Olalekan, has been dismissed, and of course it would be tried in the civil court as a civilian having lost his job. We're hoping that justice is served, and more importantly it is that the police reform bill would indeed be passed and become a law that is duly upheld, a law that would make for a reformation of the police, a change in the operatives of these agencies, and of course the protection of people, and that again we can believe that they are our friends.
Of course,
like
of course,
It's the more to take on the program. Thank you, Godwin, for coming. Godwin Ojene is a criminologist, and of course we've seen your expertise and how you've analyzed the matter. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for watching today's episode of Frontline. Until next time, I am Olajumoke Papalola. Do enjoy the rest of your day.